I was diagnosed at 65.
37, earlier than most.
Every 9 minutes, someone is diagnosed with Parkinson's disease.
And every one of them can turn to the American Parkinson Disease Association. Visit apdaparkinson.org to learn more and show your support today.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Today, the men and women of the North American Aerospace Defense Command and United States Northern Command welcome you to the celebration of the 65th anniversary of the North American Aerospace Defense Command, affectionately known as NORAD. We are celebrating a significant milestone in NORAD's history, the 65th anniversary of the original NORAD agreement and when it was signed. NORAD's existence and evolution are a testament to the enduring relationship between the United States and Canada and our deeply shared values of defending our homelands. Our host for today's ceremony is General Glen D. VanHerck, Commander, North American Aerospace Defense Command and United States Northern Command. He'll be joined by our keynote speakers, General Thomas J. Lawson, former Chief of the Defense Staff, Canadian Armed Forces, retired, and Lieutenant General Francis J. Allen, Vice Chief of the Defense Staff, Canadian Armed Forces. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the arrival of the official party and remain standing for the playing of honors to the Commander, North American Aerospace Defense Command and United States Northern Command, and the singing of the national anthems of Canada and the United States, performed by Technical Sergeant Matthew Brooker, followed by the invocation given by Major, our own Padre, Kevin Olive.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all thy sons command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true North strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming. And the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave
I'll start my invocation with the words of Abraham Lincoln. I've been driven many times upon my knees by the overwhelming conviction that I had nowhere else to go. My own wisdom seemed insufficient for that day. Would you join me in the moment of prayer? O Lord, in all of the ensuing chaos in this world, in this hour, we here today, both Canadians and Americans, find ourselves bound together with one mission to secure our homelands. And although this agreement of a binational command may be inscribed and codified by official documents, its true origins and the mortar that actually binds us together is that our hearts truly do beat as one when it comes to the value of human freedom, liberty, security, and justice for all. In fact, we believe it is worth dying for. Lord, help our imagination and our resolve to push the boundaries of our unique relationship as two distinct nations with the same vision and mission. We do not take this relationship for granted, therefore we ask for your grace and guidance to keep leading us into the future. And in closing, to the one who has all domain awareness, both from the ancient seabed outward to the ends of the universe, to the one who created the human mind with the ability to dream and to imagine places like cyberspace, to the one who sees beyond the horizon, we ask that you equip us so that the metaphor becomes our reality and we can defend our homelands with new technologies from over the horizon. And to the one who set in each heart the value of life and death and breathed into our collective consciousness that the most liberating act for the human soul is the service of others before self, steady us and guide us in our efforts to defend the true north strong and free and the land of the free and the home of the brave. In your holy name, amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, you may be seated. Sergeant Brooker, thank you very much for that wonderful rendition of the anthems. And Padre, we're happy to have you here too. Right on cue. They waited for the Padre, yeah. Now, somebody told me that we may be hearing from them just a little bit later on in the ceremony as well. Let's hear it for the CFA teams. Ladies and gentlemen, we have lots of honored guests with us this morning. The spouse of today's host, Mrs. Marilyn VanHerck, Assistant Secretary of Defense for Homeland Defense and Hemispheric Affairs, the Honorable Melissa Dalton, the Mayor of Colorado Springs, the Honorable John Suthers, Deputy Commander, North American Aerospace Defense Command, Lieutenant General Alain Peltier, and his spouse, Madame Solange Moran, Command Senior Enlisted Leader, North American Aerospace Defense Command and United States Northern Command, Sergeant Major James Porterfield and his spouse, Miss Karen Porterfield. Lieutenant General Ed Anderson, United States Army, retired, and Mrs. Ann Anderson. Lieutenant General Christopher Coates, Canadian Armed Forces, retired. Chief of Staff, North American Aerospace Defense Command and United States Northern Command, Rear Admiral Daniel Cheever and his spouse, Miss Julie Cheever. We're also honored to have so many esteemed guests in our audience today. We welcome you, Canadian and American elected officials, civilian dignitaries, former NORAD commanders and deputy commanders, active and retired general and flag officers, corporate and community leaders, commanders, directors, senior enlisted leaders, family and friends. Thank you for sharing this wonderful day with us. Ladies and gentlemen, it is now my distinct pleasure to introduce our host for today's ceremony, the Commander of the North American Aerospace Defense Command and United States Northern Command, General Glen D. VanHerck.
All right, make sure this thing's working. Carl, great voice there. You know, he works for me as a civilian during the week, and he's a reservist part-time on the weekends here at the 302nd. And if neither one of those gigs works out, you'll find him in Las Vegas announcing boxing matches. That's what's going to happen. Guaranteed. Carl, thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
What a great crowd. Really, thanks for the turnout. And whoever made the weather call made the right call. We made that a couple days ago, and I think it was the right thing. A little bit chilly out there and a little bit windy. We will sneak out to watch a flyby after a while. You heard the CF-18's taking off for that flyby. Mr. Mayor, great to see you again. As always, thanks for your support for our military members, their families. The mayor's tenure is going to come to end here on June 16th, or June 6th. He's been an outstanding supporter of everybody on the installation here. Really appreciate that. Thank you. Secretary Dalton, you're an outstanding partner too, as we moved Homeland Defense, I would say down the field quite a ways in the last 2 years and 8 months for me, and the time that you've been there, which I think is about 2 years or so. And I sincerely appreciate the work that you do. To all my fellow flag general officers, thanks for being here, senior executives, the commanders, senior enlisted leaders, our friends and family that are here. And most importantly, the members of NORAD, as we celebrate 65 years of defending our homelands in North America as the only binational command on the entire planet that does that. I'd be remiss if I didn't call out some other folks real quick. Today is National Military Spouse Appreciation Day. And our military spouses, you are the foundation for what enables your loved one to do what they do for their nations. Thank you. My spouse, Marilyn's been the foundation for this entire time. Time's almost over. It won't be too long, but thank you for what you do for me each and every day as I do what I think is the most noble thing you can do on the planet, and that's defend your homeland. So thank you. A lot of people made this happen. I'll get this out up front. I was going to save it for later. But our protocol team, Sherry Giulio, she's hiding, I'm sure, somewhere around here. And the entire team. Sherry had the lead for this event, and I want to thank them. And our action officers who made it happen, Major LaFave and also Major Choquette, who put this together, who did all the work. These things don't just happen. And I have to thank others, the Honor Guard. They come in, they leave. Nobody really, I mean, you take a notice when they're here, but they're doing so many things all the time, all over for our fallen warriors, etc. So we need to thank them as well. If you don't think we don't have a chaplain who's absolutely connected to the mission, the threads, you weren't listening. Padre, thanks for what you do. You're really connected in on the mission and taking care of our people. Our chaplain corps, especially at the COCOM and the binational level, really is there to provide advice on religious impacts in warfighting and strategy. But they also take care of our family members and our military members each and every day, and we can't overlook that and what they do for us. There are many others that I probably haven't thanked. I thanked Carl. I want to thank the band over here and Sergeant Booker for your incredible national anthems of both Canada and the United States. Thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to stop talking. We've got 3 speakers. I'm the last one. I'm going to try not to talk very long. But it's an honor to have 2 outstanding members with NORAD background and intimate knowledge and experience of defending our homelands. And my privilege to introduce the first, who's a former NORAD deputy commander and also the 18th commander or chief of the defense staff of Canada. And it's my privilege to welcome General Tom Lawson here, retired. We had a little food and fellowship last night. I can't thank you enough for sharing your wisdom and experience, so the floor is yours, General. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Glenn. That's a good crowd. Mr. Mayor, Secretary Dalton, General VanHerck and Marilyn, General Allen, General Pelche, Solange, so many distinguished guests here, and all the rest of you riffraff out there. Fat Daddy, Kiwi, Puffy. You're not riffraff. I remember you. These guys were puppies when I was in. And so proud of the positions you're holding now. Great to see that. I'm also so very pleased to be here to take part in the celebration of this milestone event for such a unique and remarkable command. My time here as Deputy Commander before I was snatched back to take the role as Chief of Defense was simply one of the most enjoyable and enlightening periods of my 40-year career. Among the many things I learned while I was here is what the young men and women of our nations in uniform can do together when they put their efforts towards the best defense outcomes for their nations. Ladies and gentlemen, anyone who takes the time to study NORAD in all its glory will marvel at what really amounts to about 65 years of vigorous adaptation to an evolving threat. It seems that just as one generation of our predecessors in uniform was becoming comfortable with their version of how they had positioned themselves for the threat, change was required. For example, when the command stood up 65 years ago, all focus was on the threat of those silver World War II era bombers from the USSR, perhaps bringing nuclear weaponry to our continent over the North Pole. Terrifying. And in response, our grandparents' generation completed one of the most remarkable and accelerated construction projects in this continent's history. The threat was serious, existential really, and they knew it. So they rolled up their collective sleeves and laid down 3 separate radar lines west to east across our continent and tied it all together to command centers often dug out of the granite of our nation's crusts, like right here at Cheyenne Mountain. And they all did all of this within a short couple of years. What they did boggles the mind. But it was what they knew they had to do for the defense of the continent. And their accomplishments back then provide us a sense of where our nations were together in 1958. The gravity of the threat swept away all barriers. At any other time, the delicate sensitivities of territorial sovereignty would have tied up negotiations for years. But with a deep sense of urgency, the drafters laid out the paragraphs of the NORAD agreement and what stands 65 years later as the only binational agreement in the world. Now that's worth considering a moment, and we did around the VanHerck dining room table last night at the residence take that into consideration. It's very interesting. Of course, there are hundreds, maybe thousands of bilateral agreements. The rule of law depends on them. But each of these bilateral agreements, in them, the agreeing nations hold their territorial sovereignty dear. In other words, no matter what the agreement says, they reserve the right to veto anything that happens on their land or approaching their borders. For NORAD, we have something completely different. You see, our political masters of the era, at the urging of those who knew what was at stake, took the incredible step, really, of putting aside these concerns regarding sovereignty and made the decision to treat all American and Canadian territory as one landmass for the purposes of air defense, and to treat all U.S. and Canadian air assets and aircraft as one NORAD force. And this stands to today, unchanged, after 65 years. I ask myself, is there anything that so well represents the deep closeness and trust between the peoples of our two nations? I mentioned earlier the adaptation that has become the trademark of NORAD and NORAD's value to our nations. Time and again, our political masters have assigned key defense missions to NORAD, and not just air defense, as you well know. The first NORAD command team, General Partridge and Air Marshal Sleman, were just putting the finer touches on the placement of several hundred interceptor aircraft across the continent in the early 1960s when the USSR upped the ante. You see, intelligence authorities had learned that the USSR had developed their own intercontinental ballistic missiles, and these nuclear-tipped missiles threatened to outflank NORAD's sensors and aircraft. Again, terrifying. But in response, the United States Air Force developed and deployed the first surveillance and missile warning system, and they provided this to NORAD for its use in detecting missile launches around the globe and then assessing the threat to North America. And this made clear to the Kremlin that a launch at any time would be detected and prosecuted. Later, as NORAD approached about 30 years of operations, the threat began for the first time to include low-flying, high-speed cruise missiles, launched perhaps at great distance from targets in North America, ironically, by those same old bombers that NORAD was once set to intercept. Again, this changed the state of play, and it necessitated a replacement of the old radar lines with the new, more powerful, accurate radars of the North Warning System that stand to today, aged. And the addition of these, at the same time, first over-the-horizon radars and airborne warning and control aircraft, along with refuelers to extend the endurance of fighter aircraft, all of this meant that NORAD was once again able to detect menacing activity at a distance and in time to respond to it to keep North American cities safe. Several years later, as NORAD was approaching 40 years in operation, with the USSR having disappeared and Russia seemingly becoming an international colleague, perhaps friend, remember those days? Many wondered if NORAD's value may be waning. And those debates were in full flight just as the horrors of 9/11 attacks arrived. Now, the simple effectiveness of NORAD's response was one of the only bright spots on that terrible day. And the headquarters building today honors the commander and deputy commander of the time, Generals Eberhardt and Findley, both gentlemen I've long considered mentors and friends. And in response to the threat of airliners being used as terrorist threats, there came a deployment of fighters and air defense systems in key locations across the continent, a deployment that stands until today, and a defense that provides the confidence that NORAD stands ready to respond to threats and the immediacy that reflects nations serious about their defense. As NORAD has moved with deftness and agility toward today's milestone, the 65th birthday of this remarkable command, the challenge for every command team since Partridge and Sleman, Jacoby and Lawson, and now VanHerck and Pelche, the challenge has been to ensure that our political masters remained aware of the seriousness of the threat as it has enhanced itself. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm so proud of having been a part of NORAD's journey and what NORAD represents for Canada and the US, and I'm also proud that the motto that was instituted when I was here under Chuck Jacoby's command in 2011 remains to today. NORAD, we have the watch. Thank you very much.
General Lawson, thank you very much. General VanHerck will now introduce our next guest speaker.
Okay, wow, well done, General. It's my privilege to introduce our next speaker. The speaker's the Vice Chief of the Defense Staff in Canada, no stranger to the NORAD mission, a long and distinguished career, and it's my honor to welcome Lieutenant General Francis Allen to share some words. Francis.
General VanHerck, Secretary Dalton, Mr. Mayor, distinguished guests, members of the United States Armed Forces, members of the Canadian Armed Forces, friends from far and wide, our families who are here today. Good morning, everybody, et bonjour du Canada. C'est vraiment un véritable honneur pour moi d'être ici aujourd'hui à l'occasion de cette célébration en tant que représentant des Forces armées canadiennes. It is such a pleasure for me to be here today at the 65th anniversary and be the representative for this event. General Eyre would have loved to have been here, and so he too sends his sincere congratulations to the members of NORAD. General VanHerck, thank you for your kind words of welcome, and thank you to everybody in Colorado Springs who always makes Canadians feel like they're at home. And in fact, you've been making Canadians feel like they're at home since that early inception of NORAD back in 1958. At that time, it's hard to think back about it because I wasn't born in 1958, and I'm pretty sure many of you here were not either. To put that era into context of, Elvis joining the military and the hula hoop and the Everly Brothers with their big record, All I Have to Do Is Dream. And for the Canadians in the crowd, that's probably that the Monroe table hockey game was coming onto the market. Paul Anka's brilliant music career was just starting, and Félix Leclerc, who was becoming the international folk hero that he is around the world. So quite some time ago when we reflect back on 1958. At the same time, as General Lawson identified, our two nations were making the dream of a binational command to defend North American airspace a reality. And it began really a new era of increased cooperation and integration in the face of that rising Soviet threat. When Canadians and Americans work together, we accomplish amazing things. And by any measure, NORAD is exactly that. Et le commandement de la défense aérospatiale de l'Amérique du Nord, c'est une de ces grandes réalisations. NORAD is one of those amazing accomplishments. But it is more than just a successful military partnership between Canada and the United States. It is also a symbol of the deep and lasting friendship between our two nations. We're more than friends across the 49th parallel. We are family. We monitor the skies and the seas together. We crew aircraft together. We train together. And in fact, General VanHerck and I were on the same capstone course back in the day together as newly minted generals. So we live and we strive and we grieve together. Some of you may have been at 22 Wing in North Bay in Ontario back in 2006 for a building naming ceremony to honor our fallen comrade-in-arms, Sergeant David Pitcher of the Royal Canadian Air Force. In 1995, Sergeant Pitcher and his fellow crew members made the ultimate sacrifice in Alaska, defending our continent. Reflections on how we mourned and remembered the 2 Canadians and 22 Americans of that E-3B airborne early warning AWACS aircraft, we are reminded of the deep connection that we share as we choose a life of service before self. A life where we fight and thrive and achieve together. Our common purpose and experience brings us closer and gives us a unified strength to watch over this spectacular continent that we share. When our work involves surveying and defending 7.5 million square miles of combined aerospace and providing warning for our vast maritime approaches, we have to be stronger together. And while our NORAD Defensive Alliance has been strong since 1958, we have to be clear-eyed and focused that the threats we face today and the global geopolitical environment has radically evolved. Technological advancements both challenge and enable our mission, and the environment of increasing strategic competition and the disregard for the rules-based international order heightens the importance of our threat-based modernization efforts, work that is actually going to be critical to our continued mission to deter, detect, deny, and defend our nations. For both of our nations, this responsibility took on renewed significance this year with the flagrant violation of North American aerospace, and through our partnership, we were able to make the necessary real-time national decisions about a threat posed by the Chinese surveillance balloon, along with other aerial objects that we were tracking. And while NORAD provided an effective response, we also need to understand our limitations and that we must maintain the utmost vigilance to counter the rapidly evolving threats to our nations. As a first step, the US and Canada have committed to modernizing NORAD capabilities and upgrading infrastructure so that we can detect, deter, and defend against threats. And we need to make sure that North America remains a strong base from which we support our allies as well as our nations. Throughout this process, Canadian leadership and American leadership has been engaged with our civilian and military counterparts on this side and your side of the border to coordinate efforts. We want to make sure that NORAD is ready to keep meeting the challenges that we face today while anticipate the challenges that we know are coming tomorrow. Among Canada's contributions, we have just approved a whole suite of NORAD modernizations efforts, probably the most quickly arriving being the Arctic and Polar Over-the-Horizon radar systems, but that is just a drop. We have to have the C2 systems that we need to move forward, and modernizing these systems so that we are able to move our decision-making faster is quite critical. Having worked throughout my military career in an information and telecommunications engineering and cyber environment, I am incredibly encouraged about the future of NORAD and what it can deliver, but I'm also aware that it's not a small body of work that is ahead of us. An important piece of Canada's NORAD modernization story is going to be around innovation and innovative partnerships at home and abroad. We have to leverage technology and innovation to develop solutions for problem sets that we don't quite know yet, and actually solution sets that we don't quite know yet. We have to keep a strong focus on innovation and partnership to protect our countries. And whether those partnerships are through NORAD or NATO or industry or academia or public or the private sector, we need to work together, pool resources, and keep coordinating our efforts to generate the results that are so important to us. And as we in Canada and as you in the United States consider the Arctic regions, this includes closer collaboration with Northern and Indigenous partners and communities throughout Canada, all of whom have an important role in upholding sovereignty as well. Friends, to conclude, I will state that Canada's most important ally, its strongest partner and closest friend will always be the United States. And so on this 65th anniversary of NORAD, as we celebrate all that has been achieved in the past, I'm heartened by our continued work to address the threats we face today and moving forward. And it is always important to recognize that while technology enables us, and enables us in ways that we're not even going to be able to conceive of right now, it's the work that we do as militaries that is ultimately very much a human endeavor, one both in its efforts and in its outcomes. The superb US and Canadian military civilian members who carry out the NORAD mission every day, day in, day out, 24/7, are the heart of NORAD. Their professionalism, your professionalism, commitment, and dedication is what we are celebrating today. Together we are always stronger. To General VanHerck and to all of my colleagues in the US and in Canada, stationed here at NORAD headquarters, working to support the NORAD mission that is executed here and across the countries, our two countries, thank you for the vital work that you do in defending the continent. And happy 65th.
General Allen, thank you very much. General VanHerck, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Carl. Get organized up here, if you don't mind. Okay, General Lawson, General Allen, thank you so much for your inspiring words, reflection both on the past and a little bit about the future. I'll talk more about the future here, but sincerely appreciate you being here and all the words of inspiration. Thank you so much. You know, I would tell you that there's no doubt that the relationship, as you've heard, between our two nations that is formed in NORAD is special. And I can't tell you how honored and privileged I am to serve as the 26th commander of NORAD. Something General Vance made very clear to me right back here in a room was about how important NORAD is to North America, Canada, and the United States when he gave me my marching orders when I took command nearly 3 years ago now. It really is special, and it's unique. It's unique, as you heard General Lawson talk about. It's the only binational command in the entire world, which makes us special. While we are separate nations, we are absolutely inseparable in purpose, and that's defending North America and our homelands. I think that's worthy of note. I'm going to start out by stating that I believe, and I've been saying this for several months in my testimony, that for both Canada and the United States, our greatest strategic risk today and challenge is our inability to change and innovate at the pace we need to do so in the environment that we operate in today. We have to continue moving forward, going faster, and you heard both of our previous speakers talk about that. We must reform legacy policies and processes that were established based on the world that General Lawson talked to you about, with Soviet-era bombers coming over the poles, and adapt that to a world today that still exists for another 9/11 type violent extremist threat into the world you heard described, with all domain threats coming from all vectors, from undersea to on orbit and in cyberspace and everywhere in between. I think that's really important. We should take advantage of the opportunities to move out of an industrial age into a data and info-driven and technologically driven environment today. And if we fail to adapt, our competitive advantage will continue to erode, and our ability to defend our homelands will degrade. So I can't tell you what the future holds exactly, but I can tell you that it will be incredibly challenging, it will be incredibly dynamic, and that NORAD, looking forward, will be in demand more so than we are today and have been in the past. The strategic environment that we're in today is absolutely the most complex and dynamic that I've seen in my 36 years of service. The threats have evolved. They continue to evolve at rapid pace, and our missions must evolve with that. We're challenged from all vectors and all domains, and today, unlike when NORAD was stood up 65 years ago, facing a single peer threat that was nuclear armed, today we face two peer threats, nuclear armed, with capabilities across all domains, challenging us across the entire globe. All of this truly underscores that NORAD is more relevant today than it has ever been in our history. Yet, to ensure the command's relevance as we move forward and face potential threats, we must continue to evolve, as I mentioned, and bring real capabilities, such as what NORAD modernization and what the Department of Defense here put in the 23 and 24 budget. So while we're making progress and we're moving forward, we must go faster and continue to adapt at a pace that is required based on the competitors that we face today. Early on in my tenure, one of the things that I did first was I combined our strategies. Instead of a separate NORAD strategy and NORTHCOM strategy, we have a single strategy. I see the commands as separate but inseparable in our defense of our homelands and North America. This gives us a lot more efficiency and effectiveness, and out of that comes a common single campaign plan. And along with that comes CON plans and O plans to defend our homelands. Foundational to this combined strategy was 4 strategic principles that I've had since day one. And the first is domain awareness. If you can't detect something, you certainly can't deter or defeat it. And so those over-the-horizon radars that General Allen mentioned, those will be key, but they're not the end-all be-all. Domain awareness is the ability to see from undersea to on orbit and everything in the middle. And what you do with that domain awareness and information really matters. And what I call that is information dominance and the use of technology such as machine learning and artificial intelligence to process that information faster, to give that information to decision makers, what I call decision superiority, from the tactical level to the strategic level, so that our decision makers can have time and decision space, the only thing I can never give them enough of. And we must look at that from a global perspective, global plans, global strategies, global collaboration, and seek to take advantage of our asymmetric advantage, which is our global network of allies and partners. Doing so will make us successful in the future. I'm encouraged by the commitments that you heard General Allen talk about of Canada and the commitments that the United States has made in the budget here for Homeland Defense and moving forward, such as the over-the-horizon radars. We must also ensure that that domain awareness gets processed in a timely manner. Foundational IT infrastructure investments are crucial. I'm encouraged the department's putting several $1 billion there, incorporating global sensors. As we move forward, we must utilize on-orbit artificial intelligence and machine learning to process data faster to give our decision makers that space I alluded to. So while we're working to field these capabilities as quickly as possible to close the gaps, I've charged our team to think about the future. Not today and not the near term, one fiscal year defense plan away, but what does the future of defense of North America and our homelands look like in 2035? I think it looks vastly different than it does today. I think of long-loitering autonomous platforms, maritime and airborne, with domain awareness capabilities and effectors that are both kinetic and non-kinetic, that we can position and move around in a timely manner. These will free up the joint force to fight the forward fight, while in the homeland, we're able to project power from the homeland safely and secure from North America. The strategic environment remains challenging, but I'm confident that if we continue to move forward, that we'll be successful and the future of NORAD will continue to be incredibly bright. You know, throughout NORAD's esteemed history and the legacy of NORAD, one thing has remained constant, and that is our people and the power of our people and the influence of our people, who are truly the backbone and foundation of what makes us successful. They are our most important resource. It's not the platforms we talked about, it's the people and the innovation. And so together with the leadership, all the people of NORAD, United States Northern Command, who have the most noble mission on the planet of defending our way of life and our homeland, I'm incredibly proud. So it continues to be an honor. Merrill and I can't thank you enough for the support that you give us, for the opportunity to lead you as a team, and to continue defending our homelands. I'm proud to have the watch, as General Lawson talked about, each and every day, every second of every day of every week of every year. For the last 65 years, NORAD has had the watch, and we will continue to have the watch. God bless all of you, NORAD and our members, Canada, and the United States of America. Thank you.